My name is Nora Quinn. I'm 34, a firefighter who still double knots her boots out of habit. I am a mother to two, Eli, 8, who wears his baseball cap backwards like it's part of his skull, and Maya, 5, all elbows and curiosity. For as long as I can remember, I've been the one who shows up with a wrench, a spare tire, and a calm voice. I was raised to be useful. My usefulness became invisible. We'd always had a rhythm in our family where visibility belonged to Hannah. She was 3 years younger than me, and she glowed in rooms like a lamp left on purpose. If Hannah got an A, it was talent. If I got one, it was luck. If Hannah changed majors, it was brave. If I changed stations after a brutal season, it was me not being a team player. Our mother, Chris, had a way of not saying much and saying everything at once with her posture. She favored a certain story, a story where Hannah was the heroine and I was the steady, dependable background. Last Saturday, the story played out under a banner that read, "Welcome, little star." Pink balloons everywhere. The kitchen smelling like vanilla frosting and the rotisserie chicken from the grocery. That smell that means someone else is doing the cooking and also that someone else has already decided who will be noticed. We arrived with a diaper cake wrap Eli had insisted on after seeing it online. He helped tape the tears and stood back proud of our lopsided masterpiece. Hannah floated in like a TV host. "You really made that?" she said, the tone of surprise like a polish that made me shine for a second. "Yep," Eli said. "It's a cake made of diapers." Hannah said, "Adorable," and moved on, her smile a card she dealt to other people. I took plates, poured punch, kept the kids away from porcelain figurines, because that's what you do in houses that would rather remember an image than the people who live in it. My mother circulated like a general, hugging Hannah's friends and whispering orders. She noticed me only when she needed ice or a bag of trash. Nora the cooler, Nora the extra napkins. I had learned to blend, show up and be useful, and don't ask who you are under the usefulness. Then the frosting tower happened. Ava, Hannah's daughter, 6, ponytail tight, precision written in her face, perched on a chair to get a better view. Eli edged closer, trying to see the first slice. Ava squinted at him. "Don't push," she said. He didn't. I said, "It's fine, lots of room." The knife slid through the frosting to a tiny plastic moon, and the room cheered for Hannah. Eli leaned forward. Then Ava grabbed a fistful of frosting and launched it like a small missile at Eli's chest. There was a smack. Frosting dripped down his shirt. Eli's face folded into the small, hot breath that kids take right before they cry. I stepped forward. "Hey," I said, voice even. Ava's face was still the outline of a child learning rules. Hannah cut the air with a sentence I knew too well. "Control your kid." It came out like a verdict. "You and your kids bring chaos. Get out of here and don't come back. You and your kids are not welcome here." The room inhaled. Eli wiped cake from his shirt with hands that trembled. Maya pressed herself into my leg. I waited for my mother to do the thing she does best. Read the room, choose an ally, salvage the narrative. She didn't. She watched like a director looking for the best reaction shot. Something in me clicked, but not the hot red of temper. It was the clean, precise click of a tool released from a socket. I smiled, small, enough to show I heard every word, and said, "Okay, not an apology, but I'll take some others with me." Hannah laughed like she expected me to beg, "Who would leave with you?" I looked and saw the people who had been shifting their weight, whose keys were already in their hands, who had been quietly waiting for permission to step out of the choreography they'd been handed. I picked up Maya, took Eli's hand, and we threaded our way through the narrow path people make when they don't want to be touched. We did not leave because of frosting. The frosting was the match. The tinder had been years of small favors that turned into bills, overdrawn trust, and expectations. At 22, when I first signed my papers at the department, I thought competence would be its own reward. My first big fire took the upstairs kitchen and half a roof. We found a teenager in a smoke-filled hallway and carried him down 2 flights. I shook for an hour after. The captain told me the shaking meant I was still human. I went home to a studio apartment that smelled like laundry detergent and heat dust, and felt certain of very few things, except that I wanted to be useful in a way that meant something. At the same time, Hannah was bouncing through internships and parties. Our parents cheered each pivot. "When I pass probation," Mom would say, a phrase that always landed differently for her. The money requests started as late-night phone calls. "My car's making a scraping noise," Hannah would say. "Where are you?" I'd drive across the city, find her idling with a wheel barely holding on, stand in a repair shop for hours while she scrolled her phone, and then hear, "Can you cover it?" $800. "I'll pay you back Friday," she promised. Friday never came. Mom's calls had different tones. "Your father's back went out. The deck needs fixing. We need help with the MRI." It became a rhythm. Payday, then a call. I told myself it was temporary. I started picking up things. Holiday shifts no one wanted, the interest calls on Dad's credit card, deposits for pop-up venues so Hannah could scale her business, the $12,200 rope rescue class the station couldn't fund that I wanted but didn't take because the family ledger was always louder. I stopped buying coffee. I packed pasta in a plastic container. When I tried to mention it, I was laughed at for keeping a spreadsheet. "You're so dramatic," they said. I left my marriage to Mark. It was civil, like two exhausted people deciding not to be cruel. We co-parent well. The kids live with me 60% of the time. The world reordered itself around school drop-offs, bedtime, the rituals that make kids feel safe. And in the background, the family kept asking, "Nora, you always know a guy." Translated, "Pay for it." "Nora, you're so responsible." Translated, "You won't say no." When the shower invite popped up in the group chat, I agreed to bring a folding table and told the kids we'd be quick and get tacos after. At the party, I performed the role I'd practiced. Ice, balloons, trash, invisible scaffolding for someone else's show. The cake threw me into a place of clarity I hadn't intended to find. I was welcome as a tool, not as a person, and tools don't bring children. We walked to the truck with a strange calm I didn't recognize. On the porch, my phone buzzed. Mom, "Don't be dramatic. Come back and apologize." Hannah, very upset. Aunts, cousins, a cascade of small pressure. That night, I washed pink water down the sink and stared at my hands. I realized I wasn't calm. I was done. By morning, my phone had a staircase of missed calls. 21 from Mom, 3 from Dad, 2 from Hannah, 1 from an aunt I hadn't seen in months. "We're having a family sit-down tonight at 6. You will apologize." The price for refusing was suddenly explicit. Don't expect help again, financially or otherwise. I saw it then for what it was. The ledger they'd been keeping, the one that always tilted toward them. At 5:55, I parked on their street. Eli wanted to come. He wanted to tell Ava he hadn't pushed. I told him it wasn't his job. Elise, the past, sorry, Mark had offered to take the kids. Eli chose to stay back with his mother for tacos. I walked in alone. They sat like a small tribunal. Mom poised, Dad with arms folded, Hannah in maternity couture, and Ava with a tablet glow on her face. Mom slid a folder across the coffee table like it was evidence. A neat list of favors, dates, totals, a sum at the bottom that suggested a down payment on a house. "We keep records," she said. I listened. I told them I would stop being their unpaid ATM. I told them I would not apologize for my son being humiliated. I took my key off my ring and placed it on the table. "Okay," I said, "I'll stay away." They'd rehearsed a negotiation, and I didn't give them one. As I reached the door, I added the thing I'd been building up to. "Don't contact my kids without going through me. Any messages will be blocked." They told me I couldn't do that. I told them I could, and I was. Outside, the first round of damage control began. Text storms, offers of mediation that smelled like trapdoors, hints that if I didn't bend, they'd freeze me out forever. I went home and started a spreadsheet, not to weaponize, but to remember what I'd done for people who'd learned it was normal to expect me. I slept in the small, loud way of people who have finally set a boundary. The ledger glowed in my head like a map. The kicker, the strange relief, was that for the first time in a long time, I had a direction. I would either keep paying their bills with my life, or I would stop. For my kids, for myself, for the quiet person who still double knots her boots and wants her home to be hers, not a place where love means debt. The morning after the shower felt like the day after a storm. The air was still, but there was a new landscape, fallen branches where familiar paths had been. My phone had a staircase of voicemails, and the group chat had been renamed without me. I read one message from my mother that landed like an ultimatum. Until you apologize, you're cut off. I stared at the little blue bubble and laughed the way you laugh when something finally makes sense. You can't cut off someone who stopped drinking from your well. I started the day not with a reply, but with a spreadsheet. It sounds petty, counting favors in rows and sums, but ledger making is part of how I keep the world honest. I made columns for date, service, amount, memory. 09 to 13, 2016. Tire repair, $800. Hannah promised Friday. 02/02, 2019. Interest payoff, $1,1900. Stop the collectors. 05/11, 2022. Pop-up venue deposit, $450. You said scaling. I typed the entries the way I used to strap in at the station. Methodical, precise. The total made my stomach drop. It also made the weight shift. If the family thought leverage came from money, leverage could be argued in numbers. But the ledger was not a weapon. It was a map I needed to stop getting lost. Daniel texted me that afternoon. Daniel, careful hands, quiet or laugh, the boyfriend who'd shown up carrying a casserole and no expectations. He'd met Eli and Maya at a soccer game a few months back and fit into our chaos like a steady stone in a rushing stream. Do you want me to come over? He wrote. I typed back a single line. No, stay. He replied, okay, I'm here if the world gets loud. He respected the small spaces I guarded. He wasn't a fixer for other people's families, just mine, by choice. Word spread through kin networks in a way that always surprises me, like a rumor with a passport. My Aunt Sam called from a number I didn't recognize. You left, didn't you? She asked without preamble. Her voice was the kind that had stayed on the side of truth for years. She'd been the family member who quietly handed me cash when I needed it as a teenager and never asked for receipts. We saw, she said. I'm with you. She and a cousin quietly messaged, tired of Hannah's production, sorry mom is mad. Those small acts of solidarity felt like unexpected stitches. The family, meanwhile, convened. My father, who had long ago mastered the look of disappointment, knocked on my door the following morning. When he arrived, he didn't ask for entry. He said, we need to talk. He wanted to rescue the narrative where the son still made the compromises. I opened the back door and let him stand on the stoop. He looked smaller. His shoulders curved toward me like someone trying to take up a job he wasn't built for anymore. You're being cruel, he said. You're cutting us off. I'm being specific, I said. I pulled open my laptop and showed him 3 lines from the spreadsheet. His jaw worked. He read numbers and memories. We never asked you to track this, he said, like it explained everything. Your mother won't bend. He looked away, the man I grew up thinking could fold anything by sheer will. They want to know if you'll co-sign for Hannah's lease. She needs a line. I told him no. I told him no, then again. The word was simple and felt like armor. Then this will get ugly, he said. It already is, I said. I'm living the ugly. I'm tired of paying for it. He left like a man who had done his best to be the middle and found instead he'd been yoked to both ends. The campaign to freeze me out began. Messages suggested excluding me from the holidays, implying I was unstable, hinting to others that I had lashed out at a child. The smear was a tired playbook. I kept seeing the same moves in different costumes. I did the only thing I could. I posted one message to the wider family. It wasn't long or performative. I won't be attending family functions for the foreseeable future. Please contact me only for urgent matters. At the baby shower, my son had cake thrown at him, and we were told we were not welcome. I won't tolerate my children being treated that way. I closed the thread. Silence followed like an empty hall after people leave a party. The silence had weight, but also, for the first time, space. I filled it with rope practice. I enrolled in the rescue course I'd wanted. With my own money, no asks, no apologies. The class made me happy in the right part of my chest. The place that's not for anyone else to occupy. I ran 2 miles in the morning, packed lunches like a contained offering of predictability, and taught Eli and Maya to tie simple knots that looked like promises, not to someone else, but to ourselves. Daniel sat with me on a Sunday with tacos and no opinions on how I should feel. He listened when I read lines from my ledger, not to judge, but to understand. "You deserve a life that isn't balance sheeted," he said, and meant it. His ex, Claire, came up in conversation only as a reference point, a woman from Daniel's past whose friendship with him had dissolved into the background. Claire had been part of his network. She lived 2 blocks away and, in the odd, small world of extended ties, had been at some of the same events as my family. I told Daniel I wasn't interested in gossip. He nodded. He was a safety that didn't require me to explain everything. The neighbor kids called me Ms. Quinn and asked about the birdhouse Eli and I were building. The birdhouse was crooked and charming. Eli insisted it was perfect. We painted it teal with streaks of orange because someone had to make our house look like ours. Each small project at home felt like a domestic ceremony. Maya glued stars on the mailbox and declared the house officially our kind of starry. I liked that phrase. It meant my house could be small and still sacred. Aunt Sam ran into me at the farmer's market and hugged me like she was sewing the world back together with her arms. "You look lighter," she said. "I feel lighter," I told her. Friends from the station sent care packages, warm socks, bars of protein, a note that said, "You're allowed to say no." The public acts of support were tiny, but they mattered like stitches in a fabric that had been ripped. At work, the rhythms were steady and brutal. I was called to a highway pileup, pulling a child from a crumpled minivan. He clung to me in a way that felt like it was both an indictment and an absolution. "Don't leave." I told him I wouldn't, and for the first time in months, I meant it in more than one sense. I came home grease-stained and raw and made pancakes while the kids talked about school and the world. I slept that night like someone who'd packed the tools where they belonged. Then the family turned toward narrative again. Hannah had the newborn announcement, a photograph of her holding a tiny bundle, captioned in ways that claimed serenity. Mom posted a carousel, candles, pink onesies, the camera angles of a family that was whole. I closed the email and walked out back to the yard where the tomato plant still stubbornly survived Maya's soccer ball assaults. I set out the folding chairs and tied my boots. Keeping the house meant more than paying off bills. It meant choosing the small domestic liturgies that made our life ours. Dinner, bedtime stories, the birdhouse leaning on its post, crooked but functional. The ledger was still there on my laptop, a cold arithmetic of years of favors. I didn't brandish it. I referred to it when needed. My mother sent one last text. "Until you apologize, you're cut off." I deleted her number from my speed dial. The act of deleting felt decisive in a way that arguing never had. It was not vindictive, it was maintenance. The weeks that followed were quieter. Some relatives drifted away. Some reached out with gentle, contrite messages. The house I returned to each night smelled like tacos or laundry, or the rope gear drying after a training session. Daniel was steady. Mark, the father of my children, texted to check on the kids and on me. We kept the schedule of co-parenting like a small, private contract. Soccer, pickup, check-ins. The children were safe. That was the thing I refused to barter. One night, after I'd washed the dishes and stacked them and tucked Maya into bed, the small ritual of one more story, I locked the door and walked out to the little patch of yard. The sky was a clear paper. I thought about what family had meant and what it could mean if I reassembled it on my terms. Not everyone would be in it. Some seats would stay empty. Some plates would be for guests who earned a place at the table. I closed the laptop. The ledger would remain a notebook of memories, numbers, and dates that told the story of what I'd carried. I wanted my future to be quieter and steadier, not scored by other people's needs. A month after the shower, Aunt Sam texted a photo of her with a small cake, just the two of them smiling. She wrote, "Sometimes the smallest parties are the truest." I put my phone down, tied my boots again, and went to tuck the kids in, humming the line I told Eli about boundaries. When someone throws cake at you, ask for a napkin and build a fence. 3 months after the baby shower, the world felt both quieter and sharper, like a wound that had stopped bleeding but still ached when touched. Life had started to rearrange itself. The house was cleaner, calmer, filled with the sound of Eli's laughter and Maya's off-key singing. Evenings were a small orchestra of simple noises, pans clattering, homework questions, a kettle whistling. But peace in a family like mine is never a final chapter. It's a pause between storms. It started with a message from my cousin Lena. Nora, you should see this. Attached was a photo. A family dinner table, all smiles, champagne glasses raised. At the far end sat Daniel. My Daniel. Next to him, leaning close, was Hannah. For a full minute, I couldn't breathe. My first thought wasn't anger. It was confusion. Why was he there? Why was he smiling with them? Then the second thought came like a punch. He knew exactly what he was doing. When Daniel showed up at my door that evening, I didn't yell. I didn't even ask questions. I just stepped aside. He hesitated, guilt already written in the slope of his shoulders. Nora, so how was dinner? Daniel. You saw. Nora. I saw enough. Start explaining. He said Hannah had reached out to make peace, said she wanted to apologize on behalf of the family, said she'd invited him because maybe he could help rebuild the bridge. Nora. You thought you could fix my family for me? Daniel. I thought maybe they'd listen to someone they didn't hate. Nora. You were in their house, Daniel, eating their food, smiling for pictures. He said he didn't realize they'd post anything. He said he hadn't meant to betray me. But betrayal doesn't always look like cheating. Sometimes it's just sitting at the wrong table when you should have stayed home. I told him to leave. He didn't argue. He just said, You're right, I made it worse. Then he stepped out into the cold night, and that was the last time he came through my door. 2 weeks later, Aunt Sam called again, this time with her voice tight and cautious. You might want to hear this from me first, she said. Hannah's been talking. Apparently, my sister had started telling people Daniel had confided in her, that I'd been unstable, obsessive, that I'd driven him away. The words were poison, and they spread fast. But here's the thing. When you've already lost your reputation once, you stop trying to clean what others stain. Instead, I did something different. I opened the ledger, I printed every page, and then I added a new column, receipts, screenshots, messages, proof of every favor, every dollar, every lie. Not for revenge, not for pity, for truth. I sent copies to my parents, to my aunt, to every cousin who had quietly judged from the sidelines. No commentary, just facts. A day later, Hannah called. I didn't answer. She left a voice message anyway. You didn't have to humiliate me like that. Mom's furious. Dad's not speaking to anyone. Are you happy now? I listened twice. Her tone cracked halfway through, not from anger, but fear. For the first time, she sounded small. The story that had been twisted for years, the difficult sister, the ungrateful daughter, finally lost its grip. No one said it out loud, but I could feel the shift. Invitations stopped going out without me on the list. Relatives started sending short, tentative texts. How are you? Maybe we should talk. And one afternoon, when Maya came home from school and saw me shredding old papers, she asked, Mom, why are you doing that? Because some things don't need to live forever. Then came the knock. It was my mother. She stood on the porch, clutching a casserole dish, as if warmth could fix years of frost. I didn't come to argue, she said. Then what did you come for? She hesitated, then said something I never expected. I saw the ledger. I didn't know how much you carried. I didn't want to know. I was wrong. The words didn't fix anything, but they cracked something open. The door, the silence, the story. We stood there, two women who'd finally run out of roles to play. I don't hate you, I said quietly. I know, she said. That's why it hurts. That night, after she left, I sat with Eli and Maya by the fire pit in the yard. Maya was painting stars on stones again, humming off key. Eli was trying to toast marshmallows without burning them. The air smelled like wood smoke and a little bit of peace. I thought about the baby shower, the cake, the shouting, how everything had started with humiliation, but ended with truth. I told the kids, people will try to make you small to fit their comfort. Don't shrink. Build your fence, plant your own stars. Maya looked up. Even if it's crooked? Especially then, I said. Crooked things survive storms better. Weeks later, a small envelope arrived in the mail. No return address. Inside was a photo, me and the kids at the birdhouse, smiling. On the back, in neat handwriting, were 3 words. You were right. No signature. But I knew it was from Hannah. I placed the photo on the fridge, not as proof, not as forgiveness, but as a reminder. Sometimes the people who break you are also the ones who prove you were strong all along. And as I locked the door that night, the house didn't feel like a fortress anymore. It felt like home.